Hands. I
Glenn Costales,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I possess all the qualifications
that I possess all the qualifications
prescribed by law for the office of City Councilman
prescribed by law for the office of City Councilman
of the City of Jefferson,
of the City of Jefferson,
and that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and of the State of Missouri,
and of the State of Missouri,
the provisions of the laws of the State of Missouri,
the provisions of the laws of the State of Missouri,
the Charter of the City of Jefferson, Missouri,
the Charter of the City of Jefferson, Missouri,
and all ordinances of the city,
and all ordinances of the city,
and will faithfully demean myself in office, so help me God.
and will faithfully demean myself in office, so help me God.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations. We've done this before.
Bill, are they ready back there? First, I would like to welcome everyone here and everyone back here for our second meeting. This is the first meeting of the 2014-2015 City Council. At this point in time, we'll call the meeting to order, and I would ask the clerk to please read roll.
Branch,
Here.
Bray, Costales,
Here.
Graham,
Here.
Henry,
Here.
Hussey,
Here.
Mahalovich,
Here.
Prather,
Here.
Schulte,
Here.
Scrivener.
Here. We have a quorum, and I'd like to welcome our new councilman, Mr. Glenn Costales. Glenn, would you like to take a few words and just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Born and raised in the state of California. Born and raised in the state of California. Spent about 21 years in the military, about 8.5 of that on the enlisted side. Moved here to Jefferson in May of '05.
All right, and you obviously live on the 4th Ward. I see occasionally walking your dogs, and I know you walked a lot in the 4th Ward to win that election. Congratulations and welcome to the City Council of Jefferson City. Next, we'll have nominations and elections of President Pro Tem, and at this point in time, we'll entertain a motion for a nomination of Pro Tem. Mr. Schulte.
Mayor, I would elect Councilman Scrivener as President Pro Tem.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been seconded by Councilman Carlos Graham. Do we just continue with one, correct?
Well, are there any other nominations?
Are there any other nominations, I guess would be the key. All right, seeing none. Discussion on that nomination, first of all. Seeing none, roll call, please. Oh, I'm sorry, I just got the heads up from the batter's box here, so to speak, that we can do a voice vote. All in favor of naming Bob Scrivener the Pro Tem for the 2014-2015 session, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Bob, congratulations. You've done a great job over the last year, and really look forward to your leadership coming up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Next, we have nominations and elections to two particular boards that are very important to our city, and we have liaisons and an alternate to one. One is the Planning and Zoning representative, and the second is the Planning and Zoning alternate. And at this point in time, I would call on someone to make a motion for whoever they think would be the best representative for P&Z. Carlos. Oh, am I wrong? It's him. Oh, it's Ken.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I nominate Councilman Graham to serve as the P&Z rep and alternate to the Board of Adjustment.
Okay, so the P&Z rep and alternate to Planning and Zoning. Is that correct, Phyllis? Mm-hmm. Okay. And There's a first and second on that.
Actually, nominations only require the nomination. They don't actually have to be seconded.
Oh, okay, great. So a nomination there for Carlos, and a nomination for the planning and zoning rep, too, while we're here. Can we do both at one time?
I suppose you can if there's consensus.
Well, if we can't, we'll just do it this way. On the alternate first of Carlos, any more discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of Carlos being the alternate, is this correct, or did you get that backwards? Carlos being the representative to planning and zoning, my bad. Please say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign, motion passes. Next we'll move on to Mr. Graham for another motion.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to nominate Councilman Ken Hussey for planning and zoning alternate.
Is there a second? Doesn't need that? At this point in time, there's a motion on the floor to nominate Ken Hussey as the alternate to planning and zoning. Discussion, seeing none. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Gentlemen, thank you. Those are both very good positions for our city. Obviously, we have a lot of growth coming forward, and appreciate you both signing on those. Congratulations. Next, we'll have appointments by the mayor. This is the 2014-2015 Standing Council Committee appointments. Clerk, do you have an extra copy of that? And we can hand these out so everyone has this in front of them. Be sure to save one for Madeline. Did you get one of these? Okay. First of all, on an admin, I would like to nominate all of these at one time if I can. Drew, is that all right? Okay, for admin, Councilman Branch, Mahalovich, Hussey, Costales, and Henry. On finance, Councilman Prather, Schulte, Scrivener, Graham, and Bray. Public safety, Branch, Mahalovich, Hussey, Graham, and Henry. Public works and planning, Prather, Schulte, Scrivener, Graham, and Bray. And last but not least, Campo would be Henry, Mahalovich, Scrivener, and Hussey. At this point in time, we'll entertain a motion to approve.
Under Public Works and Planning, you have me down for that. Should that be someone else?
Yes, that actually should be Glenn. So Public Works and Planning would be Costales. And Costales is also on admin. Any other changes that you all see today? All right, is there a motion to accept?
So moved.
And second?
Second.
And is there discussion? At this point in time, since this is a very large committee approval process, I'd like, is there any discussion, debate? Seeing none, I'd ask the clerk to please read roll.
Branch,
Aye.
Costales,
Aye.
Graham,
Aye.
Henry,
Aye.
Hussey,
Aye.
Mahalovich,
Aye.
Prather,
Aye.
Schulte,
Aye.
Scrivener.
Aye.
And I have a list here later we'll go over of who I'd like to actually chair the first meeting of those committees. That will be coming up later tonight. Another one that we have on here that I missed is the Annexation Committee. That is actually a committee of the whole. Does that take approval?
I wouldn't know why it would, so no.
Okay. And appointments to the Campo Board, we did get those covered. Any other agenda items, Drew, that you see that we need to do at this meeting?
I don't think now, no.
Okay. We'll move on to presentations from staff, consultants, and invited guests. Any tonight? All right. Presentations from the gallery on specific bills or resolutions. I have Mr. Lynn Stella.
It would be in number 14.
Oh, Glenn, I'm sorry. We're going to let you go ahead and speak now, but actually I should have called you up under 14, but you go right ahead, sir. You have 5 minutes.
Good evening. Am I coming in? Mayor, City Council, I'm here to talk about the ill-fated convention center and a possible alternative. I've been opposed, or was opposed, to the convention center right from the get-go, dating back 2-3 years. I made my feelings known to the council, and through emails and through letters in your mailboxes of the research that I did on it, and found out how convention centers were really not the thing of the future. But an alternative to that, especially since we're collecting a lodging tax, was to come up with a community center or a family center of some type. From this, I have no hard data, but I do, and I have seen, because I was in it, a nice community center that they have right here in Missouri, and actually in Lee's Summit, where they played indoor soccer. The building was capable of having a basketball tournament, tennis, volleyball, and you name it, probably even some small track and field events. Regional-wise, we're well fixed for it. Second, or part of that would be, I personally don't feel this is a big-time tourist town. I think of us more as a family town. And I think evidence of that is anyone who's gone to it and seen our state track meet and the amount of people that come to town. Now, they're not here long-term, but they do come in droves, and they make an impact on that weekend that they're here. And I think because of our location being just so prime in the middle of the state, that we could encourage and build on that type of draw that we have with regional events that would be basketball tournaments and whatnot. They would also help to keep the little family center, community center going more often than would conventions, which are, I think, dying by the wayside personally. The particular one, something else came up that I found out about with the one that, this is a Parks operated one that's in Lee's Summit that they have there, is a second floor, and they have meeting rooms with state-of-the-art video conferencing. Now, instead of having to get 200 people together, you can get maybe 20 people, and you can do it all over the state. Anybody that's capable of having and has that same type of reception. And you could accomplish the same thing with those type of meeting rooms. In this particular case, they built a second floor to the building. The family center wouldn't have to be as elaborate as a convention center, but big enough to house the venues that I talked about. I think it's also, you don't need another hotel built. If we draw the people that I think we might be able to draw, someone will build or add on to their motels or hotels, or someone new will come in and build another hotel. It's like anything else. We're a nice capitalist society, and if they see people making money here, they'll come and build something, and it'll be done with private money. The profit and loss of this, I can't speak for that. That's a tough call as how it would hold up. You probably would require a full-time staff taking care of it. If you have 20 or so venues going on an annual basis, it's going to keep people busy. But with the way they can do partitioning and dividing rooms and setting them up for various events, and you could still have meetings and conferences in separate locations. But you'd have to put it in a location where you'd have to be out of the floodplain. There's just no two ways about it. I haven't done that much research. An area I personally like is that new area, the area along Edgewood. There seems to be a lot of room there, and I don't know what the availability of land is, but the building itself would be kind of a small hangar that would typical of that type of an operation. And I would just throw it out at you to have a committee to get together and research what you can do with that money that you've already collected and how it would sit with the legal department in terms of matching together what I suggested with what's been collected. So with all that said, thank you very much for listening.
Lynn, thank you, and thank you for your service. You were a council member before, correct? And what
Yes.
ward was that?
Oh, 96, 97,
96. And what ward?
3.
On the third ward. Okay. Well, thank you for being here. Any questions for Mr. Stella? Yes, sir.
Mr. Stella, is that the facility is located right off of Interstate 70 that you're talking about?
No.
Okay.
70. Oh, Lee Summit facility. I don't know. I went there. My daughter lives there, and we went there, and they took us to the place. But it's in that area there, and I honestly can't even tell you the name of it. It's just, boy, I'll tell you, it was active, and it was helter-skelter there, and it was at that time, it was indoor soccer. I went to watch my granddaughter play. Place was packed.
You know, there's a family center there. It's right off of 70. I'm not sure if that's the same one that you're referring to or not.
I honestly couldn't say. I didn't take down name and address of the place. I could certainly find it out, though. If you're interested, I'll give it to you at the Lions Club meeting.
All right. Any other comments for Mr. Stella? Lynn, thank you again for being here tonight.
Thank you.
Next, we have announcements by staff, and welcome Ms. Janice McMillan to tell us about a couple
Thank you,
neat
Mayor.
events coming in. Janice.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just want to announce the citywide residential large bulky item pickup, and that begins a week from today on the west side of town, Monday, April 28th. And the following week, the week of Monday, May 5th, the east side of town will begin the pickup.
Any questions for Janice on our pickup? Seeing none. Next is Heritage Week. Tell us more about that, Janice.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Heritage Week celebration will be on May 20th at 4 p.m. in the council chamber. That will include awards for landmarks, the Gregory Stockard Distinguished Service Award, and the Heritage Essay, Heritage Multimedia, and Heritage Art contest winners from middle and high schools.
Any other questions for Janice on that? Yes, sir, Mr. Graham.
Also on May the 2nd through the 4th on the campus of Lincoln University, they will be sponsoring the MIAA Outdoor Championship. So I think it's a total of 16 schools that will be participating in this outdoor event. Each and every time I pick the newspaper up and look in the sports section, I see Lincoln University track and field in there. So this will be a great opportunity for the citizens of Jefferson to see the Lincoln University track and field team come out and do what they do and blow up the track and field.
Thank you very much, Councilman Graham. Any other comments or questions about Heritage Week? All right, thank you. Next we'll go into bills introduced. This is our first bill of the 2014 council, and just for the people at home, our bills are read 3 times. One is actually the first time that it's mailed to the council, if I remember correctly, and actually the first time is here. We do a first reading, which allows you, the people at home and people on TV and newspaper and radio, to actually see what bills are coming before you here in a couple of weeks. So we appreciate everyone who puts all the time and effort of coming up with these bills and getting us to this point. At this point in time, we have first reading of 2014-1.
Mr. Mayor, excuse me, I just want to point out we jumped over the consent agenda, had an item on there.
Hold all that for later. At this point in time, we'll entertain a motion for our consent agenda item, which is only one item, and it's bid 2723. Is there a motion to do so? Going once. Is there a motion to do so?
So
With that, okay, there's a motion. Is there a second? Second by Ken. All right, there's a motion and second on 2723. At this point in time, would you like to tell us more about it, Matt?
Certainly, the parking division took bids for a new parking scooter. We call it a three-wheel vehicle. Basically, replace our current three-wheel vehicles. We typically have 3 of these. Our officers drive them around for parking enforcement. We patrol the garages, parking lots, street parking, residential zones with those. What we're looking for is a small, narrow vehicle that we can pull off to the side of a car and get out easily, not block a lot of traffic, jam up the traffic downtown especially. We consider these at least a 10-year vehicle. We try to maintain them for 10 years. Our current vehicles have lasted that long as well. But again, I often get questions of why these type vehicles versus others. Basically, it's the narrowness of the vehicle. They are a expensive vehicle. However, if you consider they are used for 10 years, and we, as a parking fund, as the city's parking fund, generates a little over $1 million a year, they're a very important tool to help that program generate those funds. Again, those type of vehicles really need to have all equipped with lights and bumpers and all the things that make them crash worthy. Have people out in traffic. They road gear them out to residential parking zone areas, say near Jefferson City High School, so they do travel out and back from downtown. We had several of our staff went to Clayton to view these type vehicles. They use them there in their parking enforcement and are very happy with them. But this type vehicle allows us to patrol our assigned areas and be very efficient at it. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Henry.
Thank you. Matt, looking at the price of this particular vehicle, was this the lowest bid? Was this the lowest bid on this, or do you bid these out at all? Or?
Yeah, these were bid out. There was one lower bid for a scooter, but it was more of a prototype at this point in time. So we discussed that with our Public Works and Planning Committee and suggested not going with that. It was a few $1,000s lower. However, they also manufactured our previous scooter, and we've had trouble with that company supplying us parts. They actually went bankrupt for a time and then reopened with some different management. So we didn't feel comfortable recommending that particular vehicle. However, we did get two bids on these particular brand of scooter, and this was the low bid of those 2 bids.
And this is and this is typical of the price of what one of these vehicles would actually typically go for around this price?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Costales.
After reading this on here, I went and did some research on my own and found some mini trucks. I don't know if you're familiar with them. And I found a place in Missouri and found them online. And for a brand new one, it's $14,000. And they're right-hand drive. And according to their little stats here, they're just under 55 inches wide. And that might give a little bit more flexibility. The door is not a sliding door like what was on those, but a little retrofitting, and we're going to save several thousands of dollars if this would be worthwhile to even look at.
Thank you, Mr. Costales. Mr. Scribner.
I was just going to say one advantage. I don't know if it's worth the difference in the cost or not, but one advantage that I see in using vehicles that are clearly parking enforcement vehicles is that when people see them, they recognize them. Therefore, when you have staff getting in and out of them, people are expecting people to be getting in and out of them, whereas if it's a vehicle that is not specifically recognized as a parking enforcement vehicle, you might be exposing staff to a more likelihood of being hit or something like that. I don't, Glenn, I'm not sure that I have seen or know exactly what you're talking about in terms of the vehicle that you have, but but it is certainly, I think there is an advantage to using a specialized vehicle for that type of specialized use, or at least it would seem that it might be. Decals and so forth could be put on something like this, I guess, but that is considerably less money.
Certainly, they are expensive vehicles. Britt Smith researched this in detail. You know, adding the sliding doors is a big benefit, we feel like, not only just for the chalking the tires. And these are very narrow. They're basically 1 seat wide. But having that as, you know, driving utility vehicles, whether sometimes some of them have bench seats versus bucket seats, for example, it's easy to slide in and out either side of this vehicle. And when you're doing that, you're driving on one side. If you don't have a bench seat, then you have to. You can easily slide to the left and get out the other side. I wouldn't say that there aren't many vehicles you could probably find to modify. You'd have to add lights to all these. These come equipped with all the lighting and all this type things that you see, the safety components as well. So. Again, very expensive vehicle, but they do allow us to operate efficiently. They can turn around tight spaces, maneuver in the parking lots. They're a good vehicle for us to have, and I think we've been successful with these type vehicles in the past. Is the main point, and I know our officers would appreciate having this tool in the toolbox to do that. Now, certainly other folks staff parking divisions differently. There's no doubt that some people drive full-size cars, park them at the end of the block, and then walk. Now, that has an effect on your frequency. You could actually staff more officers and do it that way. We met with Mr. Schulte, Councilman Schulte, and talked about this in depth with him as well. Some people ride horses and do this. I mean, but, that's a different cost and different amount of people. So with our current operation, I think we've been successful with a small number of people and been able to really work the parking fund, grow the parking fund well with this.
Okay, other comments or debate? I think we're kind of in the middle of both. Mr. Graham.
Mr. Marash, is it the fact that the two vehicles that we have now are outdated, that the parts can't be ordered, or is it that it's just time to get two new vehicles?
Well, part of it is obviously they're still running today. There's probably a few month time lead on this. We do have one of them. We staff 3 of these type vehicles. We like to keep a similar fleet so you can work on them. The mechanics get familiar with them. But so we propose replacing 2 of them this year. One of them is a little bit touchy. That is hard to operate. We have one person that only actually operates one of the vehicles just because of the braking system and things. It seems difficult for our mechanics to actually get the right parts to get it fixed. So we would like to get them replaced as soon as possible.
Okay.
Next ahead, Mr. Mihaljevic.
We've done business with M&M Cart Company, and they are very reputable. I know they're a local company, more or less, in our central Missouri area. I'm questioning whether or not it says something about Winnipeg, Canada, and it says it's produced in Texas. It's an American-made product?
Right. The one from M&M, they bid a vehicle that I believe is manufactured in Canada. Yeah. That's the company. M&M didn't go broke. It was the company in Canada. They're the supplier of the vehicle that they are bidding. That's where we got our last scooters from, actually, M&M. And it's just the type of vehicle they're supplying was our issue. It was similar to the one we have, or it's the same brand, the one we have. Like I said, that company went bankrupt and has been difficult to get parts and technical assistance from to work on these, and so that that is an issue that we're evaluating. So based on our recommendation, we looked at these other type vehicles that were bid. Got 2 bids on those from different places, but the actual vehicle is manufactured in Texas, but the suppliers are from various places.
Follow-up?
Good.
Just based on, I think, the research being done by the staff, the fact that we do live in a very hilly community, and the durability of these vehicles are very well tested over time. I'm not sure if we can get parts for the other car if it were examined. So this being more or less a proven commodity, I think I would go to support what is being presented by staff.
Any other comments? Ken?
Just a question for Mr. Marash. The current vehicles are gas vehicles, correct?
That's correct.
And these are electric vehicles?
These are electric. It just happened to be that they're bidding these type of electric vehicles. That type of vehicle comes in electric.
So we'll probably see a fuel savings.
That's our anticipation, less moving parts, but it would be a new vehicle for us. So.
Yeah. And now you budgeted $80,000 for the replacement of 2 vehicles in the budget we approved last summer, correct?
Right. The previous scooters were in this price range, a little cheaper because I think the newer one is about 10 years old. And so these came in at about 85. So we had money in the equipment budget, and we transferred that 5 to make up the difference into a vehicle replacement.
I guess my point is when you submitted your budget 11 months ago for $80,000 for these 2, at that point in time you were submitting a budget and indicating that $80,000 would be allocated for the purchase of 2 replacement vehicles. Okay. I guess I look at this to say that we can debate, but have a little faith in our staff here. I think that other good points have been made. In that budget process, we approved the allocation of funds for this purpose. I know we didn't necessarily get into those details, but I think that our staff has made a strong case for to support them in this effort. So you have my support.
Any other comments of council members? Mr. Prather.
You may have already said this, but I guess in the bid is to get 2 of them?
That's correct.
And is it that dire that we need 2 right now? Can't we go just with 1? Why 2 as opposed to just 1 right now?
Well, it's just the age. Again, certainly we could get 1. We could try to make the rest last. I mean, there's all kinds of options there, but these are 10-plus years old vehicles, so we would like to go ahead and get the 2 as we budgeted. The money is available. I didn't point out this money comes from the parking fund, which is not mixed with the general fund at all. It's a self-supporting group. We're always very conscious when we spend any money. Obviously we look for the best deal, but we also look for the best tool to accomplish the task. And so as far as patrolling the areas we patrol, we feel this is still a very good vehicle, and we've had a long history of using this type of vehicle, not the exact one we have here today, but the 3-wheel scooters have worked well in downtown.
You have a follow-up, Rick?
Yeah, more or less. I guess, you mentioned that you don't necessarily need 2 of them. And would it be any different to get 1 this year, and if it so works out that it's the best thing to do, you can go get another one the next year, or is this something that you have to have 2? I guess that's what I'm struggling with, is why do we have to get 2 right now? And I know we have the money, but it doesn't mean that we need to go ahead and spend the money if we don't necessarily need 2 right now.
Well, I think the mechanics have evaluated them, and they feel that, I'm not a mechanic, but they feel that, 2 of them are kind of, really needing replaced. That's why we requested the 2 originally.
Any other comments? Mr. Scrivener.
I guess I just want to add my, you can always, in fact, I guess I do it in my personal life. I modify things to use them for purposes that they're not necessarily intended for. And but I think that what the staff is recommending here is intended to be used for this purpose, and so even though it is quite a bit more money, I think it you could replace a fire truck with a 2-ton truck and a water tank on it and a high-powered pump if you wanted to modify it, and you could probably buy it for less than it cost you to buy a fire truck. But we buy fire trucks because they're specific tools that are intended to be used for that specific purpose. And I think that what staff's recommended is a specific tool for a specific purpose. And so I'll vote for it as well.
Okay, any more debate on 2723? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Branch,
Aye.
Costales,
Nay.
Graham,
Aye.
Henry,
Aye.
Hussey,
Aye.
Mahalovich,
Aye.
Prather,
Aye.
Schulte,
Aye.
Scrivener.
Aye.
Motion passes. Next, we'll move on to bills introduced, as I said earlier. 2014-1, first reading, please.
An ordinance authorizing the issuance of sewerage system revenue bonds, Series 2014, in the aggregate principal amount of not to exceed $10 million, prescribing the form and details of said bonds and the covenants and agreements to provide for the payment and security thereof, and authorizing certain actions and documents and prescribing other matters relating thereto.
And for this, we'll have Mr. Drew Hilpert.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a continuation from the last meeting, last week. And at the April 7th meeting, the council authorized proceeding with issuance of $10 million in bonds to fund wastewater improvements. And then this document then is the mechanism by which that's done. We do have Jacob Lauer here from Gilmore and Bell, who's our bond counsel who prepared the documents to answer any questions. Generally speaking, this $10 million is, again, a part of the $35 million that the voters approved in 2010. Issuance of these bonds will not increase rates. This was all anticipated in 2010 when we passed the bonds. The projects, generally speaking, are repairs in basins 5, 6, and 12, and will eliminate 4 wet weather overflows. The closing costs are estimated to be $200,000. It's a 3.6. We're estimating 3.6% interest over 20 years. And Matt can answer any questions that you've got about the projects themselves. Mr. Lauer can certainly answer any questions about the bond documents and with whatever questions you all have.
Matt?
Yeah, I'd be happy to answer any question about the project. Drew indicated they're in basin.
Any questions by council members? I know a lot of us have been through this for quite a long time now. Appreciate all the work of staff. Our new member, Mr. Costales, do you have any questions on this at all? Okay. I appreciate that, and appreciate Steve and Drew doing that with you thus far. Any other comments on this? If not, we'll move on, since we're not voting tonight. We'll be looking at first reading of Bill 2014-2, please.
An ordinance of the City of Jefferson, Missouri, authorizing the mayor and city clerk to execute an agreement with New Mayor Equipment Company for the purchase and installation of an automated fuel system.
Mr. Betts, welcome.
Thank you. This is, as the clerk said, an automated fuel system. We're looking at 2 locations. The city currently has 4 locations where we do fueling. We're looking at automating 2 of our locations. One is at Central Maintenance. It's currently automated, but it needs some upgrades in order to bring it into compliance and allow us to do some expansion in that area. And the other location is at Parks Maintenance. The Parks Committee has already approved the Parks portion, which is $15,323. The Central Maintenance portion will be paid out of a half-cent capital improvement sales tax from the IT budget, and it's $17,604. There's 2 other locations, one at Hyde Park and one at Wastewater across the river that are going to be put in the budget for next year, along with some improvements to the gas tanks and gas pumps. Be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Questions for Bill? Okay, Bill, thank you for being here. Bill, I do have a quick question. Was this part of this year's budget?
It's been part of the Parks budget for probably about 3 years now, and it was put in as part of the half-cent sales tax budget as well.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, thank you. Yes, sir. Go ahead, Bob.
Bill, was there any kind of analysis, and I'm not suggesting that there should have been, but is there any kind of analysis that would indicate that you would anticipate a cost savings or anything because of this upgrade, or is this just a control type of thing?
We put it in place for controls. It is something that the auditors have been recommending for several years, and it's just to help with the controls currently in 3 of the locations. It's all done on a paper system. So.
Okay, thank you.
All right, any other questions? Bill, thanks again.
Yep.
Next, we'll move into 2014-3, please.
An ordinance approving a tax increment financing contract between the City of Jefferson, Missouri and Capital Mall JC, LLC for the implementation of the Capital Mall redevelopment plan and authorizing the mayor to execute the agreement.
Drew.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The council passed back in, I think it was January now, the redevelopment plan, and so it identified that the mall was an area in need of redevelopment and laid out some general parameters of that plan. Since that time, staff has been working with the developers who are here tonight to come up with the operating agreement, essentially how the nuts and bolts of this TIF plan is going to work. And that is what this document would approve. I do have Joe Lauber here, Joe, go ahead and jump up on the stand there if you want, to talk about the nuts and bolts of it. And Corb Maxwell's here as well for the developers. And this is just the best night ever because we've had 5 attorneys here, so it just doesn't get any better than this. So I'd just turn it over to Joe.
Or any higher.
That's right. And Joe, beat him up and ask him all the questions that you want.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council.
Welcome back.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm the city's Special Economic Development Council, so I've been working with Drew and with the Developers Council and developer to come up with the agreement that you see here before you this evening. Really the purpose of a TIF contract is to put the flesh on the bones of the plan that was approved and the plan that this council approved back in January. As you can tell, it's a very detailed agreement. If you took the time to go through it, it's 55 pages of materials. So what I did for you in preparation for tonight's meeting was I did put together a summary for you in memo form that kind of boiled that 55 down to 9 at least and try to get you a little closer. I will try to hit just a couple of the high points for you this evening so we can kind of focus on some of the major issues, if you will, or the things that we need to be aware of with these types of contracts. And then I'll take any questions that you have on this particular issue. I'll point you first to Section 5. It's one of the more important sections because it talks about the project improvements themselves. And what's going on with this particular Section 5 is it ties together with Section F, and it lays out what the improvements are going to be to the mall. The primary emphasis on the project improvements as they were completed as a part of this TIF are on the Capitol Mall itself, the mall building. Kind of a concept of if you fix it, they will come. And so, as we work with the developer, one of the things that becomes, kind of clear with this process is the projects that are going to be done are to get that mall back up and running, as best as it can be to be attracting these types of businesses that will then, as those businesses come in, they generate more traffic and bring businesses to the pad sites and so forth around there. So the initial focus is going to be on what you'll see as phase 1 throughout this particular agreement, which is that focus on the mall. And what I will tell you is that the other projects that are there, everything that was approved, are things that are intended to be done, but they're going to be more kind of market driven, if you will. Again, back to that concept of if you fix it, they will come. And so that's kind of what we're looking at there. And you'll see a time frame as we work through that meets with the plan as we went through it. To lay out when those projects will be completed. And so that's a great segue to Section 6, which is the redevelopment schedule. What we'd be looking at with that schedule is for the developer to start work on the mall in May or June. One of the things we have to get to is kind of the activation of the TIF itself, which I'll explain a little bit more here in just a few minutes. That phase 1 is expected at this point to be completed by next April. Again, that's kind of, we have to understand that there are shopping seasons that the mall needs to be up and running kind of fully and not be interrupted by construction, and so those things kind of can waver depending on as we go through the process itself of actually getting the construction done. Exhibit C provides a summary of that reconstruction schedule, and so one of the things I'll remind you of as we went through that process through the plan is that the improvements that are going to be done there, kind of the longer term, are going to be done in what I'll call construction periods. Okay, periods of I won't say lower sales times, but they avoid the higher traffic times that we talked about there. And so what we'll expect to see is potentially as many as 5 phases. And could last as long as through June of 2019. Again, completely market driven, so the idea is to allow some flexibility. It's best for the developer and it's best for the city if it gets done sooner, and those are the types of things that we'll be working towards. But this gives them a framework of when the work that was proposed by the plan will be completed. The next section I want to draw your attention to would be Section 12, and that deals with the funding sources and the use of funds that are generated by this TIF. And what I'd like to point out to you as well, in conjunction with Section 12, you want to be looking at Exhibit D, and I know that kind of causes you to kind of have to flip back and forth, but Exhibit D is the project budget. This is a carryover from the TIF plan. So if you remember Exhibit F from the TIF plan, if you do, I'll give you a sticker. But this is the same exhibit as what we saw on the plan, just carried over into the contract. We're looking at a total estimated project cost of about $35.9 million, and then the exhibit kind of breaks out the various contributions that are expected from the sources of funds. One thing to keep in mind always with any sort of a TIF plan or even the TIF contract, we're still on the front end of this deal, okay? These are always estimated numbers, okay? We won't know what the numbers will be until the numbers come in, okay? And so this is the developer's, highly educated guess as to, what we're going to be doing here. And we went with these guys because they are local and because they have track record, and so that's what we're working towards here, is to utilize that expertise to kind of get us there, because we're not developers as cities, just plain and simple. The developer's equity and private loan portion is about $20.6 million. The TIF reimbursables and the total would be about $10.3 million, and the non-captured CID sales taxes look to be about $5 million for the breakout there. The heart of Section 12 establishes, one of the most important factors about this particular TIF, and that is that this is a pay-as-you-go TIF. Okay, if you remember, a pay-as-you-go TIF is one where the developer makes all the expenditures up front, and then only when the project begins to produce incremental revenues, right? So revenues above what was already being produced there, is there even a revenue stream for them to be reimbursed from? Okay, so this is the safest type of TIF that a city gets into from that standpoint. While, and as we're going through Section 12 there, one of the things I'll point out, I did put a kind of a placeholder in there for bonds. The TIF plan itself talks about the possibility of bonds. So I put a placeholder in the contract, so in the event that those bonds would become something that is of interest down the road, that there's a place to do that. First thing I'll tell you is that will have to come back to both a plan amendment and to the, it'll have to come back for council approval for any sort of bonds like that. And then at that time, you have the full discretion, to talk about the types of bonds that would even be available. Right now, it's not anticipated, but at least there's a placeholder there because we did talk about that, and that was part of the approval with the TIF plan. Another point to Section 12 is the fact that CID, a Community Improvement District, which you are familiar with, was created with the city's help to assist in the financing, the revenue stream that helps to pay down these costs. This section of the TIF contract just establishes the CID's responsibility to put its captured portion of the CID revenues into the fund, and then it talks about the fact that the CID will be responsible for making sure the non-captured portion goes towards CID eligible costs. It's a 1% sales tax that's already in place. I'm going to kind of skip down here to the next really important section would be Section 20. There's a lot of detail in this one, but basically what this is this is a reimbursable project costs certification section. And so when I talk about putting the meat on the bones of the plan, this is how we go from talking about having TIF and people paying money and getting reimbursed. This is how it really happens right here. So this section sets up a form in which the developer will submit their requests for reimbursements and the things that they have to stick to that, and the things that they have to turn into the city's finance department in order to get a reimbursement back, and it kind of walks through that process. That form is at Exhibit 8. The developer is going to be reimbursed for 28.8% of its costs up to the $10.3 million number, and that provision goes ahead and it just provides the what can and can't be reimbursed. For example, when the developer came to us, they had already purchased the land, and they've said from the beginning that they don't seek reimbursement for acquisition of the land. So we set up terms with respect to that in Section 20. It talks about the developer's ability to shift amongst line items. Again, we talked about the fact that these are estimates, and so sometimes they're going to have a line item that they're going to come in way under budget on, and other times they're going to come in with another line item with more. And it allows them to do some shifting between that as long as they stay within the overall cap. And so it creates flexibility for real life when it occurs as they go through the project. So we've got those types of provisions stacked in this agreement. There are a couple things that we talked about even through the TIF plan process where the developer wasn't going to be able to add to contingency, add to the developer fee. It was really designed to be a reimbursement for soft costs and the hard costs of construction, and that's where this keeps it. Section 25 talks about public participation. You may remember this one from when we did the TIF plan. This is a provision that the developer worked with us on, and basically what it says is that in the event that this project is wildly, crazily successful to the point to where they really probably shouldn't have incentives even in the first place because we just way under projected what was going to happen here, this will allow the city to share in some of that excess profit that may come in that event. Here what we've said is if their return on investment is over 20%, the developer will share 15% of that back with the city for everything that's above that 20% number. And those numbers we came to, the 20% was a negotiated number. The 15% that they share is basically tied to if you took the total costs and took the TIF portion of it, that's really 15%. The CID is something that the developer is handling, and then they have their own costs, and so that's where those numbers come from. Tenant approvals is in section 27. This is basically a provision that protects the city against a developer kind of going out and poaching, if you will, existing tax-paying uses in the city and bringing them into the CID. So they were already producing taxes for you. They just relocate them, and now all of a sudden they start getting reimbursements off of that. And what it sets up is that in order to bring a current tax-paying use into the mall, they have to have city approval to do that. If they don't get that, there's a 1.5 times the city's tax rate penalty payment that is owed on that. Section 28 deals with sale and disposition of property. So this talks about the situation where if the developer were to sell the Capitol Mall, what happens? And basically, in a nutshell, this is a fairly detailed provision, but what it says is that in the event that the developer wants to sell the Capitol Mall and they want to continue to get tax increment financing as reimbursement, they have to get the city's approval before they can do that. Okay? Concept being there, this is the developer we chose. We want to make sure we know who our partner is in the future if they're looking to do anything differently. Okay, this doesn't count for things like pad sites. I mean, we know that when developers come in, part of the deal is they're going to sell off a pad site, or sometimes they end up building the pad site for the restaurant or whatever user comes in there. This is focused on the mall piece of it. Progress reports, the developer is going to be required to come before you every year to kind of give you an update on the status. Assignment of the developer's obligations is covered in section 31, and that talks about in the event that in certain circumstances the developer wants to kind of deal or negotiate the obligations that are the obligations that it has under this contract, they have to have the city's approval before doing that. 34 deals with the transfer and developer interest. We talked before about what if they want to sell the mall. This is what if they want to sell their entity, the developer itself. And so what it says basically, if there's going to be a major change, more than a 50% change in the ownership, that they got to work with us on that piece of it. Breach compliance talks about there's kind of two levels of the breach compliance. If the city for some reason is not paying money that's due under the contract and we haven't done that correctly, we will have 30 days to cure that. For every other type of breach that's out there, whether it's the city or the developers, there's a 90-day cure provision. And the reason that we do that is that the developer is going to go out and this contract kind of solidifies for them a revenue stream that's going to be coming in based on their projections. And so when they go out to borrow money on this project, they got to be able to have something they can collateralize. Okay? And so the reason behind it is that 30-day cure on just that payment piece is to allow them to do that. Their lenders have to be secure that they know that there's not going to be a quarter of a year where they're going to have a stoppage while something's being fought out. I'm going to tell you what the next steps are here real quick, and then I'll take questions just in case there weren't questions. It looks like there's already some questions, so I'll do that. But the next step from here, assuming that you will kind of vote this first reading through and then ultimately approve the TIF contract is we still need to activate TIF, okay? And so if you once you get the plan and you got the contract together, that doesn't automatically start TIF. If you remember, we got you have up to 10 years after a plan is approved in order to start TIF, and so we will have to do an ordinance to do that. That's going to require us one more procedural step, kind of two procedural steps to go through. Once everybody is okay with the TIF contract and we get that thing signed, we're going to go back to the TIF commission to tidy up things in front of them with a hearing, and then the TIF activation ordinance will be back in front of this council. Should be late May, early June. So with that, that's all I've got on the TIF contract, so I'm happy to take questions.
Is there a question over here to my left from Mr. Mihalovich or not?
No.
Any other questions? Mr. Carlos, go ahead.
Going back to section 27 under tenant approval, I just want to make sure I heard, I think you had mentioned the word poach. So that means if a business is on Missouri Boulevard and they decide to move out to Capitol Mall, there's a penalty?
Well, what it will require is before a business that's already operating in the city were to move into the TIF district itself, that requires approval, okay? And so you can allow it. That's not a problem. And it may be a reason for a business to do that. Maybe you were going to lose them otherwise, and it would make sense for you to do that. But the concept here is kind of the overarching concept here is that if you already have a business that's out there and operating and it's generating revenues that are not being captured, then you don't want to see those go into the mall. Okay, but that having been said, if you need to get your mall filled, and that's something that as the the political will here of the citizens of Jefferson, that may be something that you want to approve. But it at least causes a check, because the last thing you want to have happen is that early morning or late night phone call that you get that you were talking about earlier this evening is somebody saying, why in the heck did such and such store that was operating here, why did that just open up in the mall and now that money's being siphoned away? And so this kind of at least gives you an opportunity to put the check on that.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? Bob.
Thank you for the presentation. I found it interesting. I made two marks here. First one being placeholder for bonds. What would you anticipate might be a reason for request to issue bonds?
What we see sometimes, and right now the bond market itself can be kind of very difficult to get that initial financing. Any more initial financing from a city, where the city is actually borrowing money up front for the development, is difficult unless the city puts its annual appropriation pledge against it. Okay, and we've seen stories in Missouri about how that's turned out in some cases, and so those types of financings are difficult at this point in time. However, and that's an annual appropriation backed revenue bond in that case. You can also just have what I'll call a straight TIF revenue bond, and that is typically a lender will be more likely to loan money if they can see a history, that the project is up and running and that it's producing funds, and so they might be willing 3 years down the road to offer some really nice credit to the developer if they can show that is going to produce revenue. And so in that case, if we're going to be reimbursing the developer for their costs plus interest, okay, and the interest kind of rides outside the deal, and so it's to our benefit as a city if the project is up and running and it makes sense from an interest standpoint that we might want to do a TIF revenue bond as opposed to letting them sit there with their bank loans that we're paying the interest on to go ahead and do that. So that's probably the perfect reason.
Taking advantage of the city's ability to borrow at a lower rate.
At a lower rate, absolutely.
Okay. And then the kind of following up and along the same lines, I also put an asterisk here beside the tenant approval. Is there a provision or is there a methodology for the city to approve a business to move? You use the example of Missouri Boulevard, to move from Missouri Boulevard into the mall and yet exempt somehow or have a reimbursement somehow so that the city wouldn't necessarily lose the revenues. The developer would still get the benefit of having that tenant, having the tenant's rent and so forth, but the city wouldn't necessarily lose out on that revenue stream.
There is the statutory provision for relocations from within a county, so I think that would fit your circumstance in that case, and there's a procedure statutorily that we could go through for that. It would not only exempt the city's tax in that circumstance; it would be all of the taxes, and so. We all probably would need to look at that very hard. I think the developer, obviously, they're counting on this as a reimbursement stream as well. So, depending on the circumstances, I think it would definitely be a two-party decision in that. But there's a method for doing that, and I think we would just have to work with our partner on that to do that.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Any other questions on 2014-3 dealing with TIF agreement with capital? Time. Be back here in a couple of weeks. Appreciate your explanation there. Next, we'll bring up a first reading of 2014-4.
An ordinance of the City of Jefferson, Missouri, authorizing the mayor to enter into a cooperative agreement with the Capitol Mall Community Improvement District for funding and financing of Community Improvement District improvements in relation to the Capitol Mall TIF redevelopment plan and contract.
Drew.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is the CID version. If you just heard the TIF, this is the guts of the CID, and I'd be remiss if I didn't say Joe's from Lee Summit, so if anybody wants to ask him about it at the sports complex after the meeting, he'll be here.
Answer that too.
There you go. Any questions for Joe on this particular matter on the CID? Joe, would you give us a quick rundown of what this basically does?
I promise it will be quick, Mayor.
Okay.
Really, this is part and parcel with the first thing that we just did, and the section 12 that talks about the CID has a requirement in there that if we approve that TIF contract, then we need to do this cooperative agreement with the CID. All it does is it establishes, because when you created the CID, it's a political subdivision of the state, just like the city is, and so it's an intergovernmental agreement really between the two to talk about the revenues. In this case, because this is a pay-as-you-go TIF, pretty low risk to the city, we've kind of just put all of the responsibilities for the CID over onto the CID, like collecting the taxes and distributing the taxes and things like that onto the CID as it's set up in the statutes. The 50%, the half of the CID sales tax is going to come over. This contract says that they've got to put that captured 50% in the special allocation fund. It ultimately goes right back to the developer for reimbursement. They keep the other half in the CID, and it's got to be used under the statutes for CID revenues. That's really, it's very straightforward.
Okay, any questions there? Does it mean Abercrombie someday? That's all I hear.
That's on you.
Sorry, that's kind of an inside joke. My kids have been giving them heck for that for a long time. Anything else on 2014-40 on CID? All right. Once again, thank you for coming on.
Before I go, I can't answer the Lee Summit Recreation Center question. No, it is not the one on I-70. It's actually on the far east side of town. It's a Parks and Rec run facility that's kind of north of 50 Highway by a couple miles.
All right. Thanks again for coming in. Drive home safe. Next, we'll have first reading of 2014-5, please.
An ordinance amending the code of the City of Jefferson by deleting Chapter 7, Boards and Commissions, Article 14, Jefferson City Public Television Steering Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. During the last negotiations with Lincoln about our JCTV contract, which council approved a couple of months ago now, it had a provision to delete the JCTV steering committee. Two-part, really. It's kind of lost its purpose. At one time, it was kind of the station manager, and at this point, it was just meeting for the sake of meeting. And the other part was to make sure that Lincoln had the freedom to broadcast as they see fit. So the contract you signed and Lincoln signed both agreed to dissolve the committee. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Drew? Okay, we'll see more about that coming up at our next meeting. Next, we have two resolutions, 2014-1, and 2014-2. At this point in time, I ask the clerk to have a quick reading of number 1, please.
A resolution authorizing the City of Jefferson to apply for the Unilever grant for Hyde Park training.
Okay, at this point in time, is there a motion to do so?
Second.
Is there a second? It's been moved and seconded. I think Mr. Turner's gone. Drew, are you going to help out? Thank you.
Yeah, that's fine. Jason had a family emergency to take care of. This is an application for Unilever for $6,000. They do this annually. There is no matching grant. This is the application portion.
Okay. Any questions there? Okay. Seeing none. Debate? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Oh, wait a second. Roll call, please.
That's right.
Tried to balance the tables for
I appreciate
earlier.
it.
Roll call, please.
Branch,
Aye.
Costello,
Aye.
Graham,
Aye.
Henry,
Aye.
Hussey,
Aye.
Mahalovich,
Aye.
Prather,
Aye.
Schulte,
Aye.
Scrivener.
Aye.
Motion passes. Next, we'll have a reading, please, of 2014-2.
A resolution authorizing signatories for documents dealing with Central Bank.
A motion, please.
So move.
And a second. Mr. Betts.
Yep, as the clerk said, this is just for signatories for dealing with Central Bank. Currently, Mr. Hilpert and the mayor are the only two signatories. This resolution would change that to being the mayor, Mr. Kroll, and myself. Two of the three of us would be capable of being signatories on any documents with Central Bank. In the future, part of our purchasing code revisions, we are going to put it in there by position as opposed to by name. So, but for now, the way it's written, we have to do everything by name, and so the recommendation is for the three of us to be the signatories.
Any questions there? Debate? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Costello,
Aye.
Graham,
Aye.
Henry,
Aye.
Hussey,
Aye.
Mahalovich,
Aye.
Prather,
Aye.
Schulte,
Aye.
Scrivener,
Aye.
Branch.
Aye.
Motion passes. Bill, thank you very much. Nothing under 14. Council and staff discussion or presentation topics. Seeing nothing there under 15. Under new business, at this point in time, we'll entertain a motion to approve the 2014-2015 council meeting schedule. And I think everyone's had a chance to look at that.
So moved.
Moved by Sean and moved by Rick and seconded by Sean. Discussion. Any major changes there, Drew? I can't remember.
No, we just accommodated those two meetings that we sometimes miss, which is the holiday.
But at this point in time, we've not added President's Day as a holiday.
Nope.
Okay. Okay. Any discussion there? Debate? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Branch,
Aye.
Costello,
Aye.
Graham,
Aye.
Henry,
Aye.
Hussey,
Aye.
Mahalovich,
Aye.
Prather,
Aye.
Schulte,
Aye.
Scrivener.
Aye.
And with that, we are at that magical point where this portion of our meeting is over. We will adjourn with that now. And next, the Admin Committee, Annexation Committee. Yes, Glenn?
I'd like to make one announcement.
Yes,
before
sir.
You adjourn. Councilman Graham and I will be holding a Fourth Ward Town Hall meeting on June 14th at 10:30 a.m. at the Capitol West Event Center on Fairgrounds Road.
Okay. Is that a Saturday or Sunday, guys?
Saturday.
All right. Thank you very much. Any other announcements by council members? All right. Next, this meeting is officially adjourned if we have a motion to do so.
Second.
Is there a second? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Same sign. Motion passes. We're now officially adjourned. Next, we will have meet.